It's time for another Let's Play featuring the Infographics show's favorite lab rat. Thanks to a pandemic, we're a bit limited on the challenges we can send our most expendable writer on, so instead, we're having him try out some of the net's favorite games. Turns out he was pretty bad at Minecraft. Is he any better at Kerbal Space Program? Stay tuned to find out. Alright, Kerbal Space Program. Now, this game I've had my eye on for a while. It was actually sitting on my Steam wishlist, so I was kinda stoked for Infographics to buy me a copy and have me play it as a challenge. I love space, and I love sandbox-style games, plus I know about spaceflight already from my general knowledge and the fact that one of my friends used to work for NASA before moving to Europe to work for the ESA. No, I don't know where the aliens are at, and she wouldn't tell me. Okay, so I figured I'd watch some tutorials before hopping on and avoid some of the pain of jumping into the game blind like I did with Minecraft. And the guy I was watching playing recommended a few mods, so I installed them to make life easier for me. Next, it was time to conquer space, Kerbal style. First mission, launch a rocket. Simple enough, especially given the fact that I have like 3 rocket parts to work with. I fired up my booster and in seconds my Kerbal was having to peel his face off the interior of the capsule thanks to the incredible acceleration. I nearly panicked though when after deploying my chute it decided not to open up until the rocket was like 6 inches from the ground. I owe Jeb a cold one. He rode a rocket to near certain doom like a pro. Next mission, orbit Kerbin. Alright, so to get into orbit, I know you have to move sideways as fast or faster than the planet is pulling you down. Astronauts only appear weightless in orbit because they're in freefall, perpetually missing the planet as it pulls them down thanks to their sideways momentum. It's like when you're in an elevator that's in freefall and experience the same weightlessness, only an astronaut's body won't turn into jello on impact with the bottom floor because they never really stop falling. They just keep always missing the Earth. So I had to launch up on a trajectory with a lot of horizontal speed. Now you can go straight up and then at the apex of your trajectory start pushing sideways, but that's like walking along the sides of a square building to get from one side to the other. You can cheat instead by cutting the distance roughly in half and just going diagonal. Thanks to the Kerbal Engineer add-on, I could see the delta V I needed to achieve orbit, and I got the Kerbin values from a handy-dandy subway map I found online. Actually, flying the rocket was a bit hairy, but we got into orbit no problem. Then I snatched up my science from the goo canisters because the tutorial I watched online warned about stuff getting vaporized on re-entry. And then I fired my engine retrograde to drop out of orbit. Sure enough, the goo canisters exploded and I panicked for a moment thinking my capsule was going kablam. My goal was a lunar landing, so the next step was to achieve a flyby of the moon. I decided I'd fly a 2-man mission, bringing Jebediah and Bob along so that Bob could do some handy science stuff. I used my handy Delta V subway map again and built a multi-stage rocket with liquid fuel boosters. I decided the solid fuel boosters were overkill for my current needs and made my rockets a bit uncontrollable. Well, everything was going great until about 8,000 meters when the rocket started flipping end over end. I realized that in this current design, as the fuel drained, it changed the center of gravity of the rocket and made it extremely unstable in thick atmosphere. Oh, also, I forgot to put a parachute on the capsule. I was determined to save my Kerbal's lives though, so I decoupled the capsule and decided the only way to survive was to jump for it. Now Jeb's parachute opened no problem, and he floated serenely down enjoying the view of an out-of-control rocket loaded with fuel flying around over his head. Bob, however, well, I don't know if it's a bug or maybe only pilots get parachutes, but Bob had no chute. Moving at 50 meters a second toward a very pancakey death on the ocean, all Bob could do was put his helmet back on. Safety first, kids, and then start firing his RCS jetpack as furiously as he could. That shaved like a whole 1 meter a second off his fall speed, but incredibly Bob survived his splashdown. Never mind that at those speeds a human would have had every bone in their body shattered, and their shins would have ended up in their skull if they hit feet first. Somehow Bob actually survived. My rocket needed a redesign, and Bob needed a long vacation, so it was moonshot number 2 for me. Attempt number 2, a 1-man mission, because Bob and I weren't exactly on speaking terms. New, lighter, and improved design featuring an honest-to-God parachute on the capsule for a safe return this time. Liftoff and orbit went without a hitch, but when I began my Mooner injection burn, I kinda realized my Delta V was looking pretty low. I knew I hadn't exactly achieved the most efficient orbit in the world, but according to my Delta V subway map of the Kerbal system, I should have had more than enough Delta V in my final stage to fly by the moon. With the engine sputtering to a stop, it was time to revert to a vehicle assembly. Wouldn't it be nice if real missions could do the same? Would save billions in taxpayer dollars, that's for sure. Okay, attempt number 3. I skipped recording the liftoff this time because you guys get it by now. And I successfully completed a Mooner injection burn, only to realize that again I was short on go juice to deorbit and land back home. Once more, revert to assembly. Time for more tinkering. I'm still coming up short in the Delta V. There's been so many versions of KSP I found out that maybe I was using an old Delta V map or something. Attempt number 4. Alright, this time I know I over-engineered this mission, with more than enough fuel. If I came up short again, my flying and engineering skills must really suck. But no, I managed to make it out to the moon and had more than enough fuel to deorbit and make it back home. As I was cruising within a few thousand meters of the lunar surface though, I couldn't help but think of how awe-inspiring all this was. I mean, I know the graphics are not the best and they really can't be in games like this or it'll melt your computer, but there is just something about spaceflight that's so awesome. I would have given anything to be on one of the original Apollo missions, since apparently the USA has given up on doing anything awesome in space. After exiting the moon's sphere of influence, I waited to get to the apoapsis and fired my deorbit burn. It's always best to fire at the apoapsis since it's more fuel efficient. Though to be honest, I had so much fuel left over I could have been as sloppy and inefficient as I wanted to. Everything was going well until I sped up the game and I flew straight through Kerbal and popped out the other side. I guess this is because the game simulates in chunks, and if it's moving too fast, it'll simulate straight through re-entry. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, that's mission accomplished. Time for a moon landing. Alright, I designed a multi-stage rocket with a lunar injection stage and then a combined descent and return stage. My tech tree was kinda lacking, so I don't know if there's better tech out there to do this with, but I was stuck with what I had. This design was definitely inefficient, and building something more along the lines of an Apollo lander would have been way better. But as I was quickly learning, this was Kerbal Space Program, and there's no problem that can't be solved with more boosters. So sitting on the launch pad, I decided to try to snag some quick science using my brand new science module. It's free science, why not? I sent Bob out of the capsule and tried to slowly edge him downwards to get in range of the science module so he could nab the science and reset it. I wanted to use it again in flight, and that's when Bob totally biffed it, falling off the capsule and smacking against the boosters before landing flat on his face on the ground. Okay, my science greed needed to get under control. I'm so sorry again, Bob. I'll make it up to you one day. Attempt number 2, and I decided to just launch. Everything went peachy until about 9,000 meters when I tried to do a gravity turn way too early and the whole thing flipped out of control. I figured I'd throw some fins on this bad boy and sort out the stability problems. Also, it couldn't hurt to put some booster separators on my big boosters. Last thing I needed was a mid-air collision. Okay, attempt number 3. Rome wasn't built in a day. The fins worked great, booster separation went off without a hitch, and then I realized that my burn to orbit was hugely inefficient. Alright, I did some off-camera research to try to get better tech and came back for attempt number 4. This time I'd use different boosters and fuel lines so that my main engine could fire at the same time as my boosters, but use fuel from the boosters rather than from its own reserve. This way I could gain all that acceleration without using any of my main ascent stage's fuel. Also, I switched to a one-man lander. Sorry, Bob, but you gotta sit this one out. I can't spare the Delta V and I was getting pretty sick at failing. Sadly, the design was pretty unstable and inevitably flipped out of control. Too bad, because the boosters looked pretty slick. Okay, complete new design. Time for a new attempt. This time I decided that bigger was better and I used the brand new size fuel tanks and the new engine to brute force my way to victory. The initial thrust to weight ratio was going to kill my Delta V though low in the atmosphere, so I strapped on a pair of boosters and lit that firecracker up. To be honest, I didn't expect this design to work for some reason, probably because it looks so dumb. But sometimes dumb just works, and I was in orbit with Delta V to spare. Or so I thought. I'm pretty sure my descent burn to the moon was pretty inefficient because by the time Valentina touched down, she definitely did not have enough fuel to get back home. Rather than let poor V die on the moon alone, it was time to revert the launch once more. Man, I'm doing a good job of not crashing things, which I feel is the most important part of this game, but I am crap at figuring out how to fly efficiently. Alright, attempt number… I forgot, to be honest. Let's all be grateful that real NASA didn't screw up this badly. I had meant for Valentina to be the first Kerbal on the moon, #girlpower, but when I redesigned the whole ship, I accidentally let Jeb pilot it. At this point, I just wanted to plant a damn flag on the damn moon already. So it was mission go with Jeb en route to be the first Kerbal to stand on a heavenly object. The new design worked pretty well, and I even made it into orbit with some spare fuel in the ascent stage. That was good, because I was pretty sure I would need it for the descent on the moon. I made it to the moon in one piece and then eyeballed a good landing spot on the sun side, only to realize I was about to go over the edge of a giant crater, so I fired to change my trajectory to just short of the crater. After a few burns to adjust my landing area, I screamed toward the surface at over 100 meters a second, waiting for a last-second suicide burn to land safely. It was ballsy, but you know what? I have faith in the math, and the math didn't lie. The suicide burn was successful and I hit the surface at about 1 meter a second. Not too shabby for a piloted landing. Now it was time to do a few bounces, plant a flag, and discovered that the moon was not made out of cheese after all. Then, well, I hadn't really brought much science to do or anything, so it was all pretty bare bones to be honest. So there wasn't much to do but fly home. Instead of flying straight into an orbit and wasting fuel, instead I got into a descent height and burned a trajectory straight back into the Kerbian sphere of influence. Then I flew back up to the apoapsis and with literal fumes left in the tank managed to successfully deorbit a bit too aggressively with my first burn, putting me on a suicide run straight into Kerbin's surface at an extremely steep trajectory. I readjusted to something a little less suicide-y and time warped for a nice re-entry into the atmosphere. Much like the real Apollo mission, I let my landing stage burn up in the atmosphere instead of my capsule, leading to one heck of an awesome light show. Man, is there anything cooler than rockets or re-entry? No. The answer is no. A few minutes later, Jebediah was back safely on the surface of Kerbin, except I realized I left the smartass on retrograde and his capsule kept flipping over trying to align retrograde. Oh well. Jeb was safe back home, even if it was the middle of nowhere, and my mission was completed. Moon landing accomplished, and my Kerbal Space Program was basically as advanced as the US's, despite the US having half a century to do something other than sit in low Earth orbit. I had a blast with this one. I definitely liked KSP much better than Minecraft, though in the end I feel like I'm going to be playing both games long term. Ready for more action? Check out I played Minecraft for the first time, or watch this other video instead.